Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Desiree Duffy, the host of the Books That Make You show. And today we are talking about books that make you unravel the mental health crisis in the world of sports that no one seems to talk about a lot. Now, there are aspects of the world of sports that you just don't hear about sometimes. In an environment where people feel entitled to be entertained by the athletes chasing balls around on the field, well, sometimes we forget about the human equation underneath those jerseys. Our guest today is Chris K. Jones. Now, Chris is an award-winning author, a serial entrepreneur, and a former competitive athlete and coach. His experiences with athletes and his lifelong journey to understanding the minds of athletes inspired him to write his debut novel. Chris's mission is to invite readers to engage on a journey of self-discovery using entertaining storytelling infused with his wisdom and knowledge and all of that experience. So we'll inspire others to heal themselves. Chris, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Desiree. So great to be here. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure. Now, tell us. So we have Headcase is the name of the book. And actually the book one is called Shock and Denial. Can you just tell us, give us the rundown if you could, Chris?
Sure. It follows a week in the life of Dr. Andrew Beck, who's the go-to sports psychologist for troubled pro athletes. And there's a head he can't fix, except his own. And when his own inner demons get the best of him, he uses that insider access to athletes in a wager, which leads him down this dark path of blackmail, murder, and life or death bluffing. So his only way out is to go all in. And it's really just a story about if you don't discover your demons, they're going to destroy you. And I'm really happy the way you started this off about how professional athletes are kind of people that are really getting ignored in the mental health crisis. And it's pretty amazing how much they go through and what they have to go through. And I just thought it'd be more interesting to kind of talk about this in a story form, in a thriller, and something that keeps you, but it's still the same message.
Yeah, and that's what good storytellers do. Our life is filled with stories, whether the books are fiction or nonfiction, and you're drawing from your real experience. And I think that's one of the fascinating things about the book and the way you write it. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you've segued from your professional life into a new professional life as a writer? Can you talk about that?
Well, I've always wanted to write, and I dedicated my book to my high school English teacher, Mr. Paul Butanek, who really inspired me and put the seed in me that I could actually do this. But I also enjoy business, and I was studying accounting. And when the choice came, my right brain and left brain had a nice little discussion and what I thought I could do. So I chose accounting and went to study that. But I still took writing classes in college. And in sophomore year, my writing professor said, you're talented, you should pursue your writing. And I said, I just grew up poor and I don't want to be a poor, starving artist. So I'll go make some money, then I'll write. And it took me a while, so I worked a lot with startups and doing accounting and finance for them. And I helped companies grow, and then eventually started a couple of my own. And my last one, I was the CFO of a construction equipment company. And and then I built it up, and after 10 years sold it. And my last day as CFO and co-founder was January 31st, 2020. And then I figured I got it, it was 45 days to figure out my life. And then all of a sudden we went into pandemic. And I often, I think it's my fault because in January, my goals were 1, spend more time in my house, and 2, have isolated time to write. So it's all my fault why we went into this pandemic thing.
It's your fault. I love that. Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting too is your hero is really an anti-hero, and you're unraveling a lot of really dark themes and the dark side of professional sports. Can you talk about why you chose to do your writing that way?
Yeah, Andrew's a real interesting person in that he's really good with his patients. He's really wants to help them, but yet he has his own generational traumas and from childhood that come from his father and his father's father. And his father was a Masters champion in golf, and Andrew was a golf prodigy at 5. But he didn't want to play golf. He wanted to play baseball. But his father saw that they were going to be the first father and son Masters champions. But he drove Andrew to the breaking point. And at 18, being the top ranked amateur in the country, he walked away from the game. And this is so true of how many times parents thinking they're doing the right thing with their child, they push them to that point, that breaking point, and not understanding. And it was then an act of defiance to go against it. But he still missed that competition, that drive. So it goes in anything when you have these types of issues that don't get solved, even as a psychologist, they're not perfect people either. It comes out sideways. In his ways goes through gambling, that he needs that rush. It's less about the money and more about sitting at the table across from someone and mastering them, using everything he knows about psychology. And even his father, as a young boy, taught him how to mess with people's heads on the golf course and get in people's heads. But he still needs that competition. And by not having it and a healthy outlet for it, it goes into the shadow world. Now that's pretty drastic compared to what a lot of other athletes, but so many athletes have had addiction problems, um, gambling problems. There's just it runs the gamut, and we don't really see this because we care about what they do on the field, and then when they're off the field, we don't really care so much. Or even their short-lived careers, and we go find the next hero, and it's really really tough on them. And so I tried to bring it out in different ways, not only his problems but the problems of his patients, and seeing what they really have. A baseball player who was a drug addict, and that was because his father enabled him. A basketball player with impulse control issues, and a hockey player with rage issues.
That is so true. And I just got to tell you, Chris, I talk to so many people who are athletes, and in some degree, too, people who have achieved some sort of celebrity, right? They often feel, especially if they've done it since they were young, like you were explaining with your character, you feel pushed into it, whether it's parents or teachers or coaches. You don't feel like you have a choice, and that can really just kind of eat people up inside. What would you want to say to folks who might not necessarily be aware or never thought of what the people who we put on pedestals, what they're going through? What do you want to say to the general public about athletes and their mental health?
Remember that they're human beings like you and me, that some of these athletes had horrific childhoods during my research, just horrific. And how they got through it was what they could do with their athletic ability on the court, in the field. And that's where they were able to compartmentalize their life, where the one part of their life that they could control, so much of it is about control. And that's the one thing they can control, the thing they can do. They can jump, they can run, they can throw, they can hit, they can shoot. And that part of their world was the only place where they got really a sense of peace and understanding. Or it was a healthy outlet for the rage that they felt, that they could get it out on the field and it was okay. And it was the one place that they could get it. So I think it's really like kind of understanding that they're human beings, that they might have gone through a lot in life, just like all of us. And we all have our generational traumas. So have some compassion for them, that when they understand, when they say that they're not okay, that it's okay for them to be not okay, that it's okay for them to say, I can't go out. I can't go out on like Simone Biles did on the Olympics and saying, I'm not, I'm not ready mentally. Your body could be ready, but the mind isn't. And her was a really interesting case because I don't think people realize like she could die, right? She does a flip and lands on her head. She's a paraplegic or she dies. And I don't think you and I go to any work where the probability of us dying is there because, we misspelled a word or our spreadsheet didn't work out, right? So it's like it can be life or death. And the other really interesting thing, and there's a white paper on this about the difficulty in the world is sports psychology. So even they have a difficult time because if they are hired by the team, the HIPAA laws don't apply. And they have to report what goes back. And there's even a scene in the book where, John Palmer, the pitcher, he like asks if he can get an upper because that was what his drug of choice was. And, they get through the scene and he says, I am supposed to report this. I won't because we'll keep it between us, but I work for them, not you. So unless the athlete hires the psychologist outside, the psychologist has to report the findings to the team. And they may say, get him ready. Yeah, his body's ready, but his mind isn't. Get him ready.
Wow. Yeah, that's something I never even considered, but that's so true. It's like you don't have that privacy and that ability to just be open with somebody because you're just like this puppet on strings. Oh,
But and the athletes want to perform. I mean, Tua, you're down in Florida. Tua is a great example of, and I even Twittered about him. Like, not only did he have this physical injury, but he might have had an emotional experience too. He doesn't want to let his team down. He's an athlete. He wants to play. And sometimes the doctors have to save the athletes and the coaches have to save the athletes from themselves and not think about, what's going on. And it's hard. And I understand the coach's dilemma. You want to win, you have pressure from the upper office, but in the end, hopefully they'll really want to look after the athlete's well-being.
yeah. And you know what we hear a lot of times too. Um, and being from Los Angeles as well, I've heard people say this about celebrities and child stars too. It's like they need to just be an athlete. They need to just kick the ball. They need to just do what they're supposed to do and not have an opinion on anything else or talk about anything else or do anything else. It's almost as if the fans want to also control
Mhm.
what the person is doing. And then the person still feels like, oh, I just wanted to, kind of raise some awareness or I wanted to, talk about something that I'm impassioned about and they get shut down. So with that in mind, what might you want to say to athletes who are out there or somebody who's in the spotlight that feels that pressure? What would you want to say to them?
Yeah, for the athletes, I mean, they're under all sorts of different pressure. Just a real quick study that I did that professional basketball players in the NBA were scoring on the same levels of anxiety as men and women on the front lines. So they need an outlet for this anxiety. As much as the fans can make or break an athlete, they're still a person, just like, and they have opinions. They can express their opinions. You can choose not to listen to it if you don't want it, right? Then if they've developed a platform because they've reached out, that's great. That's good for them. So I think they should be able to, and especially in mental health. So you got to praise people like Naomi Osaka, Kevin Love, Michael Phelps, who did Weight of Gold. And, so many of those athletes are now coming forward and setting up foundations and things like that. And there's for it. So, really, we got to applaud them to that. They're putting themselves at risk there too, right? They really are. I mean, even the name of the title of the book, Headcase, it's a derogatory term for an athlete who's having trouble either on the field or off the field that's affecting their performance. And, that's why I kind of chose that name until let's get past these stigmas of one, asking for help with mental health in all of our lives. And two, that let's remember that they're whole people and they've overcome things that you and I probably never had to do.
Yeah, Chris, I couldn't agree with you more. So tell me, how much of the book is based on your life?
I could say almost nothing and a lot. So there's Easter eggs everywhere in the book
Mhm.
about where I grew up, things I did when I was young, when there's certain things that are happening, things that have been said to me, little anecdotes from my life. But as far as the traumas and things like that, that's purely from my imagination. The players are from my imagination. Anyone who I spoke to, nothing of their stories in here. It's all from my imagination, even the world, because I created
Mhm.
like an alternative reality 2019 pre-pandemic where I made up my own teams and leagues so I didn't come into any I just didn't want to get into any conflict. And it was fun too, because this is the type of thing I did when I was little. So Yeah, Andrew's nothing like people ask, is Andrew like no, he's nothing like me. I would never I don't gamble at all. I had to learn how about poker. I knew nothing about it. Yeah, so I had to learn all this stuff because that's what he did. So there were so many things that I had to go through in the journey of creating it. But yeah, none of it's like me. So
I hear you. Okay. Well, I caught the poker analogy that you mentioned going all in. I play poker actually. I haven't done it in a
yeah,
long time. So I love poker. And you're right. It's an adrenaline rush and it's very psychological. So when you talk about using both the left brain and the right brain, who wins out? Your creative side or the logic?
yeah.
Can you talk
It's
about that?
yeah, it's really interesting. It's called neuroplasticity. The ability from right brain and left brain. I'm left-handed, which also uh, creates the ability for left-handed people. We have like kind of a bigger tunnel in between our right and left brains, and so it really depends what's happening. And I often have to like fool my left brain, my logic side, my CFO that's constantly in my head. What are we doing with this? Why are we doing this? And to let the artist go out and play. So, like, one of the things I did because I was constantly hearing that chirping in my head was I created a timesheet. So I gave uh, my left brain something to focus on. So it took 714 and a half hours to write Headcase. So I kept a daily timesheet.
Wow. Wow.
So I kept time, and that helped me. And it's something I always did in my career because I always wanted to know where my time was. But it gave that part of my brain something to be pacified with, so the artist could really continue and grow. That side of my head's been in charge for the last 30 years, and now it's really time to let the artist get out and do what it wants to do.
Yeah. I do. I talk to so many authors who have been a professional. A lot of lawyers. I don't know if you
Yeah.
realize this. A lot of lawyers like to become writers at some point, medical professionals as well. And you're talking a little bit about your process, and that always fascinates me. Some people are more pantsers and they write by the seat of their pants. Some people are, they must outline everything. Can you tell us about your writing process?
Yeah, the pantsers or the plotters. So
Mhm.
I'm a planter. I have an outline. I
Mhm.
have an outline, but I still give a lot of room for the intuitive process and to get in that flow state to allow the story to come. I learned a great lesson from Neil Gaiman about letting your characters talk to you. There's an
Mhm.
unbelievable amount I learned from like, so I just like sat there and like, okay, talk to me. And like Lamar, the basketball players, y- he's got a dairy intolerance. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that about him. And he told me about his dairy intolerance and how when all the other kids got ice cream, he had to eat a bomb pop. And he hated them because they hurt his teeth and they get all sticky. Like these are all things that come to you. And it's interesting, right? Because it's all coming from my brain, right? So I know that is coming from my brain. But if you allow yourself to suspend your own belief all day long, I'm asking people when you're reading to suspend their belief about life and things and get brought into my story as an author, I also want to suspend my belief. I'm like, okay, tell me what you want. You guys tell me the story and I'll write it. And it's amazing how well that works. And they just tell me what they want to get out.
Yeah, it's like they're being channeled through you and you're acknowledging they come from your brain. Who knows? I've talked to some authors who feel that it there is some kind of outside something. We won't go
Yeah.
too far into that. But you bring up the idea of neuroplasticity and emotional intelligence. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because it seems like you've really done some research on this and you're really knowledgeable about this aspect of it.
I think the emotional intelligence is just part of my life's work and learning about it through just going through my own understanding my various traumas and understanding how my mind works through meditation practice, through mindfulness, and those things. So I think it's really important by understanding our traumas and where we came and our generational traumas and how much of the trauma that I experienced was due to the ones that my mom and dad experienced. And it wasn't intended to put on there, but that's just and then the overcorrection. So we see even in the book all this overcorrection that happens, and this is what happens in our life. Where to give you an example, Like in my mom, uh, my grandfather was the type, it was an old Italian type, and he said, okay, bring home A's or don't come home. And my mom was like six, so I didn't have that pressure about grades, and probably to the point where we should have put more pressure on it to do better. And everything was about sports growing up. But then it goes the other side. Like my older brother was just amazing at everything. Whatever he did, he was great at. Or I was a grinder. I just had to work harder than everyone else. And I just did more. But I didn't have as much natural ability. I just pushed myself. And sometimes did the unhealthy point because I wanted to make my parents proud. So to the point, like my senior year trying to make the team, I ran so much I broke my legs. I fractured both my legs because
You're
I just
kidding.
ran and ran and ran till my legs broke, and I just would put by the pain. I had eating disorders from wrestling that went into my life. So, we have our own traumas that we go through, and I'm not blaming them. It's just they're doing what they can, and then we haven't. We take these traumas into our lives. So I had to do a lot of self-discovery work for myself to understand where my triggers are, where my, even like all the things I've done, and I've been very successful in business. And sometimes, mine not good enough, but and I feel like a failure. Even writing this stuff and like not seeing some of the results. And it's like this is a very long game. And I'm beating myself up. My book's been out 6 months, and it's like, okay, it takes people years before they really develop an audience. But I'm so used to my startup mentality, like, why isn't this like selling everywhere? It's just, and I'm, indie published, so it's even harder. And so sometimes we have to take ourselves out. I think self-compassion, before we can really develop compassion for other people, we need to develop some self-compassion so we're not as hard on, if we're not as hard on ourselves, we'll be a lot less harder on other people.
I gotta tell you, Chris, I talk to a lot of authors and I work with a lot of authors, and I give all the indie authors so much credit because it takes a lot of tenacity and a lot of hard work. You're doing the job of the publisher. That's a whole industry in and of itself.
Mm.
Not to mention the marketing and the promotion and writing the book and everything. So hats off to you for doing that. Now, can we talk a little bit about this book as a series? Are there going to be more?
Mhm.
Yeah, tell us what we can expect in the future.
Yep. So I'm working on the second book now. So it takes place right after. Book one is just 1 week in his life as we see Andrew's life just go from, really the top of the world to spiraling downward. And now it's another week. This book will take over place about 30 to 45 days. So I have these really intense short periods. So the outline's done. I'm about 150 pages in, 100 and so pages into the first draft. Hopefully I'll, be able to get it out by next spring. And I'm also exciting about I'm having the audio book being done for book one. That's going to come out right around the holidays. So I'm very excited about that, and that's been an interesting process of working with the actor doing that reading. Um, so yeah, there'll be more to come. More about there's another athlete that comes in, a tennis player, the bad girl of tennis, Robbie Owen. Whatever the boys can do, she can do, and really trying to focus more on that as well. So yeah, it'll be a continuing journey. I mean, I kind of scoped out about 3 or 4 books worth, so I have the rough outlines all the way through. So now it's just uh, getting the time to sit down and get through it, which I'm excited to do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you're raising awareness and your characters are so vibrant. I love that about them. And with that many books, that's something too. Don't be afraid to go back and reapproach those publishers and those agents, because when they see that you've got a whole wealth, a series behind you, and that you're doing everything to promote it and get it out there yourself, that helps. That'll get their attention a lot of times. So don't give up on that. You can always, indie authors all the time are finding themselves being transitioned over into the traditional publishing world. Just never know. Okay. I have kind of like a fun question I like to ask authors like you, where you have so much inventiveness and you have this powerful message that you want people to be aware of. If you could hand a copy of your book to one person in the world with the guarantee that they're going to read it, so they're going to read it and understand your message. You can't say Oprah. Everybody says Oprah. Please don't say Oprah. But who would you hand your book to?
It would be either Michael Phelps or Kevin Love. And yes, of course, I would love to that they would, feel that this is something that speaks to them, but more something that they would feel like, oh, somebody understands what I went through. I'd be more interested in that, that someone say, oh, God, he really understands what I went through and what I'm going through, and that this is okay. That this isn't, that I'm not alone. So many people with their mental health issues, they just feel isolated and alone, that no one's going to understand them, that they don't know why they feel the way they do, and that something's wrong with them. Nothing's wrong with them. They are a normal person, and we all struggle in different ways, and one we can't judge each other's struggles, but just accept each other for who we are, and that we're all doing the best we can, and try to help each other get through. We all have a piece of wisdom that's useful for another person. So hopefully, I want people to be entertained when they read it. People have told me they've really enjoyed it. It's a page turner, they get through it, and then if they pick up a little bit about mental health and seeing like, okay, athletes, they're just like you and me, then that'd be great. I really would enjoy that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, what might you want to say to aspiring writers or somebody who's got those golden handcuffs on and they're in the corporate world and they don't know how to break out and follow their bliss? What tips might you have for aspiring writers?
It's a lot about sacrifice. Something has to give. So what are you willing to give up? TV time? um, a weekend here and there if you're caught. I was working 60 hours a week or more. Our company was growing at 40% per year, and I would come home in the evenings, weekends. And a lot of times I had to work on weekends, and a lot of times you're tired. But it's finding that extra gear. I've always been able to find another gear in everything I do, sometimes to my detriment, where I would just ignore pain and break myself, but other times to my benefit, where I could find another gear and push myself and say, how bad do you want it? It's really comes down to how bad do you want something, and what are you willing to sacrifice? Nothing comes without sacrifice. And you have to make those tough choices. And it's hard if you have a family, everyone, kids need time and things like that. Um, I organized my life in a way to make sure I always had time to do the projects and travel. That's because that's what I love. And you do have to find that place where can you make the sacrifice. And I think everybody has time, you know. Eh, don't watch
Yeah.
TV, get off social media, you know, sit there. And we all have done it. You look there, you get caught in the streaming and like you just spent an hour and a half looking at dumbass videos. They just, and then like I got no value out of that. And that's what they're trained to do. They're trained to just pacify your brain. So you just keep, next, 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 next. We'll take that time and just sketch stuff out. It doesn't even have to be good.
Mhm.
It could just sketch it out, just dream, just sit there and find something that get your favorite cup of tea or coffee and go to a cafe maybe and just get a journal out and start writing. And it's okay that it's, oh, well, it's crap or that doesn't matter. Just get it out and it'll be better.
Yeah. Well, a friend of mine, Joel Eisenberg, likes to always point out that you, everybody, has exactly the same 24 hours in their day. You have the same as Albert Einstein had, and
Yep.
Stephen King has, and Chris K. Jones have. We all have that same amount of time. It's all a matter of making sure that we're using it.
Right.
Um, Chris, okay, tell people really quick where they can go to find you, find your books, find you online, your website, your social media. Give us all your details.
Great. Thank you. It's the website is chriskjones.com. My Twitter is headcase underscore novel, the same as my Instagram, headcase underscore novel. Facebook is Chris K. Jones author, and LinkedIn is Christopher K. Jones. And you can email me. I mean, feel free for your listeners to email me at headcase at chriskjones.com. And for your viewers, if they subscribe, they can get the first 7 chapters free. So I offer
Oh,
that to everyone, that they can go out, just, put your name in my email list, and then it'll automatically send you to a link where you can download the first 7 chapters free.
Excellent.
But if
Chris,
I can't get you in the first 7 chapters, then don't buy my book.
it'll definitely loop you in. I love it. I love it. Chris K. Jones, author of Headcase, entrepreneur, and extraordinary human being. Thank you so much for joining us on the Books That Make You show today.
Thank you. It was really great to be here. Appreciate your time.
You bet. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Make sure that you check out our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. You can also follow us on Instagram and on Facebook and on TikTok. Subscribe to our newsletter so you always stay up to date on great interviews with authors like Chris and more. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.